What is a drop-down day?
So a drop-down day is when the timetable is disbanded for the day and different activities take place and outside speakers. This particular day in September 22 was outside speakers. It happens in all of our secondary schools.
And were parents notified that this drop-down day was going to happen?
It is part of the normal process within a school on an annual basis. I'm not certain how it was communicated out to parents or whether it was on this occasion, but I did say in the debate today that communication of some of elements of what is happening in our schools, perhaps does need looking at, and I'm sure that the school will have taken that on board.
And do you think it's important, what do you think about parents needing to know the content of these drop-down days? Because I understand certain topics parents can choose to remove their children, but if they don't know what the content matter is, then they obviously can't make that decision.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. We need to inform so that they can have that choice. However, a drop-down day is there to support children around their physical and wellness, and the police are in, ambulance, public health are in, so it is giving them that introduction to elements that are really helpful and supportive to them when they're in a secondary school, which is quite a significant difference to being in primary.
Now, in your statement to Tynwald, you said there were a number of internal and external organisations that were invited into the schools that day, but nobody's actually said who those organisations were. Can you reveal who the organisations, internal and external, were? So
the ones that I can remember were the police go in and they talk about drugs and alcohol abuse. Certainly there was the inclusion element, which was carried out by a youth worker. There was an element of, I think it was called Body and Mind, I think I said that in my statement, and that was run by health visitors or the school nurse. So they're all professionals that work with our schools to support these drop-down curriculum days.
One of the areas of concern, we'll come to the detailed area of RSE in a minute, because I understand that part of the report hasn't yet been completed. But if we talk first of all about the guest speaker who's been labelled as a drag queen, it does say in the, albeit redacted, summary, that the guest speaker did bring up the subject of drag and did reveal that they were a drag artist. Or I don't know whether that was the phrase, because it was heavily redacted. Do you accept that when you're telling 11-year-old children this kind of information, then it's no wonder they did go back and say a drag queen has spoken to us today in lessons? Yeah,
I've got, I can understand that. I can understand that there might be the way that's portrayed back to a parent. None of us know how that's taken place. However, when guest speakers are in our schools, they introduce themselves, they say what they're there to do, and my understanding is they also say what they do in their day job or what they do outside of that. So I think that's where it has come into it. And my understanding is that a drag artist at weekends.
Do you feel, though, that the subject of drag was particularly relevant to an audience of 11-year-old children?
I don't know what the actual content of that inclusion was completely at this stage, because I haven't seen all of the evidence. I've seen that summary report and recommendations. What I will say is that we need to make sure that it is age-appropriate curriculum that's been taught, whether that's a drop-down day or whether that's within a normal lesson. However, it was about inclusion. Unfortunately, it was described there was a drag queen in school, which everybody then assumed that it was somebody dressed in all their drag artiste regalia, and that definitely was not the case.
But do you accept where the confusion has come from, that 11-year-old children being told about the subject of drag queens, drag artists, is that really relevant for 11-year-old children? Is that a suitable topic for them to be discussing?
My understanding was it was just purely at that introduction of who they were and what they were. They were not there to deliver on that. They were there to deliver on inclusion, and that was about that inclusive environment and community in a school around the LGBTQ plus community. And obviously at QE2 School they do have a Rainbow Club.
The presentation, why has the department been so reluctant to reveal what that presentation was? Because surely if a parent was to ask what was taught in history today, the school would quite openly say, well, this is what was taught. Do you accept that the fact that parents have been, the information has been withheld from parents is what's caused a lot of the speculation? And had the school just been open about what was presented, a lot of this may have gone a different direction.
Yeah, there's certainly elements that perhaps could have been resolved quicker. However, once you go into that independent investigation, that's what we needed the independent investigators to establish. But we have said that an executive summary will be published at the end of this because there's so many elements to it. And the drop-down day is just one, and we've only concluded on that at this stage.
Now, I understand that the teachers had been interviewed. It does say in the executive summary that teachers say the content of the lesson was measured and appropriate, but they are the ones being investigated. I understand that the parents of the child that was taken out of the class and the child have not been interviewed by the investigators. How can the department be seen to be balanced if they're only asking the teachers who were there and not the parents or the child?
So obviously you talk about the teachers. Obviously he's interviewed everybody that was present on that day. It wasn't just teachers, there were external speakers as well. And obviously we can only interview people that have agreed to be interviewed. And we do have strict protocols around interviewing children, and that consent would have to come from the parent.
They've not been approached, as I understand.
That's certainly not my understanding.
Have any teachers or schools raised concerns about the content matter of RSE?
I'm not aware of individual teachers. This obviously is an advisory curriculum. It was developed with all of our PHSE leads, and we have one in every school, and then we also have an advisor at the department. So it's been done by the professionals, it's been collated by the professionals, it's been looked at with the Manx context in place. So it's had professionals all over it. The delivery of it, which is that next phase, it's age appropriate, and what I've seen of it is it's done in sections for the appropriate age. So year 7, which is your age 11 to 12, it's sectioned off, and then all of the content is within that advisory curriculum. So the next stage is to establish the facts around that, and was any content utilised that shouldn't have been. With regards to what's been out there in the public domain and from the original video that you did, there was certainly documents getting waved around that were not delivered in our schools, never have been and have not been. So, that has caused an element of some of the concerns around that, because people could see from the video what it was. They've then gone online and looked that content up, and that's certainly not been delivered in our schools.
Now, in fairness, Eliza Cox did refer to this being English schools. That was as a result of the department saying they were using parts of the English and Scottish curriculum and looking at what's going on in Great Britain.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Social media has cherry-picked bits.
That's correct, isn't it? And that's the dangers of social media and what's picked up from it. And of course it gained traction quite quickly, which is where it's become very disappointing for our school, that school community. And it's been very difficult for them. Of course, we've had half term in between it, the news of it breaking, so that's when you get a bit of a delay. Then it was getting the investigators in place and then interviewing everybody and then getting statements and getting them verified and into the report and the report written. So I actually think it's been quite a quick turnaround. It doesn't seem it, but then we also had 2 snow days in the middle of it, so teachers couldn't be contacted. you know, I want to do this as swift as possible because we need to do that for the whole of the QE2 community, and we need to do it for the rest of the island so that parents are confident that what's been delivered in our school in this curriculum area is appropriate for the age and their child in school.
Do you or the department regret not giving us the interview when these allegations were made? Do you not think that a lot of this could have been dealt with initially to give people confidence that you as the minister and the department were taking these allegations seriously?
I have to say, when I first seen that video, I was quite annoyed because I thought, we've got a good relationship, June would contact me. I wasn't aware that there had been a refusal. But what we had done as a department that day, because it was so close to half term, was agree that we'd put a statement out to everybody. So that's what we'd done. And it wasn't that I was refusing to come on camera with you. It was just get that statement out. Then we had half term. I didn't know any facts. I don't know the facts till that independent review was done. And I think that's the right way. I should not be going and speaking on camera without the facts in front of me. We hear that too many times. They haven't got the facts, but they're talking. I'll only talk about the facts, and I think that's the right way. Has there been a delay? Yes, because of half term there was a delay, and getting the investigators on board, there was a little bit of a delay as well. Hopefully we can move smoothly into this next phase and complete it as quickly as possible.
But in terms of that reassurance, even though you didn't have any facts, do you feel that the department maybe should have been more open in saying they were going to deliver it rather than just sending out a press release, which is what was done?
Deliver the investigation?
Yes.
My understanding was that was quite clear, but you know, I take that on board, and if we haven't got that message out clearly, I know the head teacher certainly had given that out to her community, that she was supportive of the investigation going forward. And you know, as was stated in Tynwald today, we are an employing authority as well, which is different to most other government departments. So we do have to have a duty of care to our staff. We have a duty of care to our students first and foremost as well, to make sure that they're safe and what's delivered in school is within their best interests.
Part 2 of the report is now being compiled. What's the process for that, for the investigation?
So the terms of reference are now public. They've been published on the website today, and it's looking at the lesson that was delivered in February 23 at QE2 to that year group, and obviously we'll gather all of that information. I think Eliza Cox was talking about she'd had representation from parents to her. I'm guessing it was from QE2, not from any of our other schools, but I assume it was QE2. And obviously there was representation at Moran Commissioners as well. And she was speaking as a spokesperson for these people. We need to establish all these facts and come back with what was delivered that day in that particular class.
We've also had representation from parents of other schools that say that RSE style content is being delivered under the guise of other lessons such as science and biology. Has there been a full stop done on this content, and are you confident it's not being delivered via a different title of a lesson?
So there's definitely a full stop being put on the PSHE. With regards to biology and science lessons, they will continue as they have done with curriculum content. Obviously we were aware that there was some concern around some of those lessons, and the head teacher is looking into that and addressing that. But we cannot stop our children's education and curriculum, so science and biology will continue to be taught.
And does that include topics of a sexual nature?
I'm not certain what's actually in the curriculum or what age group you're talking about, but that certainly could be answered by the head teacher.
Will you be asking them to update you?
Yes. You know that obviously that's part of this process, that we will make sure that fully aware of everything. I know people probably think you should be aware, you're the minister, but operationally day to day, a curriculum gets delivered in all of our schools. I don't know the detailed content of all of it. So.
Finally, why was the brief and the details of the investigators kept so secret? What was the reason for that?
As I said in Tynwald this morning, we went to the government list for investigators. There was 2 people possibly available to us. We had to then speak to them and appoint them and agree terms of reference to get the process going. We had one person that was ready and available straight away, the other person wasn't. So that was when we thought, actually, we need to get on with this. So we got one person onto gathering the information and detail, and the other person was coming to support and make sure that report was delivered as quickly as possible. We didn't have both on board at the same time, so it wouldn't have been right to publish the names. And it was really to protect that first process, to make sure that there was no challenge of the individuals doing it. They could freely go into our schools, gather the information from everybody that was involved in that drop-down day. There was nothing more behind it. That was it. And obviously we've published all of that data today, because you do need people's permission to be able to go forward and publish data as well.
And do you think parents should have the right to know who is presenting material to their children and what the content is?
Yes, totally. And you know, I have had challenge not just in this situation, but since my tenure as minister, there are concerns from parents, and they should know, you know, what's been delivered to their children. And I said that this morning as well. I'd encourage any parent, if they're not certain or they're unsure, go and speak to their head teachers, speak to the teachers of their children, and that's where they'll get the answers, because each school could be delivering something different at any time throughout the school year.
Because there have been cases in the UK where schools have refused to give parents the information on this content. Does that concern you?
It does, but I wouldn't expect that on the island. You know, we've always been a community-focused environment, and communication with our parents is key. And obviously education is so important for the future of the youngsters and going forward in our schools, but also for the island. Without our young people being well educated in and across the board, not you know, with giving them the life skills, I suppose, is what the PSHE curriculum is, and they can then make choices going forward, and I think that's really important. But education, and I think there's a lot of education that needs to have happened with the whole of the Isle of Man community, particularly around social media, because it does concern me what has gone on there.
Will the content of these presentations be in the final report? Even if identities aren't, will the content be available for public scrutiny?
So we've said that there'll be an executive summary. That's what's in the terms of reference, and that will be done after phase 3. And I'd hope at that stage we could also say this is the curriculum going forward. If there's any content that needs that should be part of that summary executive, it will be published.
I'm talking about specifically the content of the lesson that was presented to those children. Will that content be made public for public scrutiny?
So I think for full transparency it should be, because there shouldn't be any reason why it wouldn't. However, we've got to let that investigation take place and let the facts be found, and you know, our parents need to have trust in what is being delivered to their children in our schools on a daily basis.